Hi, my name is Nina Simone Bentley, and I'm here with Mr. Bill Smith, owner and operator of historic Baker's Keyboard Lounge. Mr. Smith, tell us today, why are we here?
Oh, well, we're here today at the historic Baker's Keyboard Lounge, the oldest jazz club in the world, to talk about the restoration of our historic piano.
So, what's going on with your piano? Talk to me.
Well, our piano has been here a long time. It was selected in 1950s by Art Tatum, and now we think that it's time for the old girl to have a new look, a new dress, if you will.
Okay, so how do you plan on restoring that piano? What's the game plan here?
Well, the game plan is we hope that many of our viewers, friends, and family, and people that love Baker's Keyboard Lounge would join in the efforts to fund this effort to restore this historic piano. What we're trying to do is with GoFundMe is to utilize this vehicle to bring finances to the project of restoring the piano in remembrance of Lynn LaPlante and all the others that have played on that piano that would like it restored.
Okay, so you mentioned all the others. So tell me about a few of those others.
Well, the piano's been played by a host of people. I mean, you can name them. They played on it. Any great artist that plays the piano has probably been here at Baker's at some point. Names like Oscar Peterson, Earl Goddard, Bill Evans, even those McCoy Tyners of the world,
Ahmad Jamal.
Amar Jamal, Stevie Wonder. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I could be here all day naming the list of people.
Okay, so what's going on with the baby? What's
Well-
it going to take to bring her back to her
Well,
richness?
she's reached her last leg.
Aw.
She's crying and in need of life support. Everything is broken down. The finish is gone. The keys are slightly dull. The board has no action, and that's no way to leave an historic monument that sits inside of Baker's, just broken and undone.
Okay, so I got to ask the hard question. What's it going to take to restore the piano?
Well, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take, first of all, love and concern from all our friends, family, and patrons. But next, it's going to take funds. What we need to restore it is about $35,000 to bring it back to where it needs to be, and then another $10,000 to maybe to have an event showcasing what we have done in that restoration process.
Okay, so we're talking about $45,000. Now I got to ask you the question.
Sure.
Why not just buy a new piano?
Well, that would be the easy thing to do. I've never had anything easy, and I don't believe that the legacy that is Baker's, Clarence Baker, Juanita, and others have long lived with this piano in this room. Artists around the world have played on this piano. It is a historic gem, not only for us, but for the rest of the world that loves Baker's Keyboard Lounge. So it is our duty to restore that piano back to its prominence.
Okay. So in other words, if these keys could talk, they'd have a lot of music to bring back. Tell me about the origins of the piano. How did it get here? What was it? Let's talk about the origins of Baker's itself. You know that story pretty well.
Well, pretty well, yeah. It started with Clarence Baker, Fannie Mae Baker, and her husband. They bought a sandwich shop in the 1930s, and then Clarence Baker came along as a young squire to take over the sandwich shop and to take control of that duty. And in doing so, he added music to the sandwich shop, which then created the motto, which is Baker's Keyboard Lounge. Pat Flowers began to perform here at that time, playing the piano. And then after that time, you had a host of others, such as Art Tatum, who was a phenom in his own generation. What he did was offer to select the piano for Clarence, a Steinway piano out of New York. And with that selection, Clarence went and made a purchase, and it was delivered in 1955. That being said, this piano has been here ever since. It's been played by the greatest musicians in the world.
Okay, all right. So you took some of my questions. So we've got a 1955 Steinway. Okay, that was selected by
Art Tatum.
Art Tatum. And so we want to keep this piano. We think this piano has a wonderful legacy. It's a part of the entire legacy of Baker's. Now you
Sure.
mentioned a sandwich shop. You mentioned that
Yes.
they want to bring in music.
Right.
And you mentioned that the first music they bought in was
A pianist.
piano. Exactly.
Yeah, Pat Flowers. And he was so entertaining that he began to bring in the crowds, not just for sandwiches, but now for the music. And then because that was Clarence's love, which is jazz music, other people at the time also loved that genre of music. And it was that which propelled Bakers to what it is today.
Okay. Now, speaking of what it is today and speaking of the past, I understand you have an interesting story about your first experience at Baker's Keyboard Lounge before you came to own it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, dating back to when I was a lad, I was 17 years old, and I was told to come to Baker's Keyboard Lounge if I wanted to hear great music. At that time, I left school after practice and jumped on the 8 Mile bus, came down to 8 Mile in Livernois, and walked right in and was greeted by Clarence Baker. I was a green-eyed kid, of course, not knowing what to do or what to say. He asked me, could I purchase a drink? And I said, yes, I could. He said, but it couldn't be an alcoholic drink. And I said, I don't drink anything but, lemonade or Kool-Aid. And he said, well, you can have a lemonade and you can sit in the first booth. At that time, I came and sat down and saw Earl Klugh and Perry Hughes perform. It was the greatest show I'd ever seen in my life. And I fell in love not only with Clarence for allowing me to come in as a youngster, but I fell in love with the bandstand, the musicians that played on the bandstand and their respect for the music.
Right, and that's how Clarence was. I have a similar story. My first visit to Baker's was with my mom, and we walked in the door, and Clarence looked at me like she's a little young to be in here. And my mother said, I promise she won't smoke or drink. And he said, okay, as long as she doesn't smoke or drink. But that's how Clarence was, and that's what this club means to not only Detroit, but to the jazz world stage. It's a mentoring club. It's a place where people come and learn how to cut their teeth, their stage presence, all those kinds of things. But to do that, to keep it in the vernacular, to keep it in the vein in which it was founded, in which you have run it, we need to fix this piano. We need to restore it to its greatness.
I do agree. And not only just to restore it for the purposes of historic value, but we still utilize the piano in our Kids and Jazz program so that kids today who don't have music programs in their own schools can come in every Sunday, no charge, and come and practice on this piano and learn how to play the craft of music.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that program, a little more.
Sure. That program began when we started the ownership of Baker's Keyboard Lounge. It's headed by Al McKenzie.
Another great pianist.
Great pianist. He's a music director for many. And also Alan Barnes. Those two collaborate very well to offer a school training session environment for young kids that want to come in and learn music.
Okay. And you mentioned Alan Barnes.
Yes.
For those of you that don't know, tell us about Alan Barnes.
Alan Barnes is one of my mentors, actually. He began his career with Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds. He's a saxophonist, extreme, and he's an excellent teacher, and he's a very patient musician. Yeah. And what he does is offer his talents and services to us in that Kids and Jazz program, which begins at 3 o'clock every Sunday, ends at 5 o'clock.
So would it be fair to say that Baker's is a place that musicians, no matter how much fame they get, no matter how far they go into the world, they always return home to Baker's Keyboard Lounge?
We consider Baker's Keyboard Lounge the home for musicians, and that's what we continue to say, and that's what we continue to show every day. That's why this piano is so important, because as it is a percussion instrument, it's imperative to have that instrument playing at all times when we have a bandstand. We would not like to lend to the electric keyboard, which is okay, but there's nothing like a percussion instrument playing with the band.
Exactly. That's why it's part of the rhythm section,
there
right?
You go.
Is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we...
Finally, I would just like to say I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening to us, but I would also appreciate you helping fund this restoration project. It's a dire need. She's on her last leg. And if you see it in your hearts, if God can bless you, maybe you can bless us in this project of restoring this historic piano here at Baker's Keyboard Lounge.
Okay, so they'll be able to find this on GoFundMe page. There'll
Yes.
be links on Facebook and...
Yes, there'll be links on our website, which is the official Baker's Keyboard Lounge. There'll also be links on our Facebook, and the GoFundMe page will be offered very soon. So just stay tuned and listen. If you do have any questions, you can call Baker's Keyboard Lounge at 313-345-6300. You can speak to Hugh or Eric or Bill, and somebody will get right back with you with your donations. Thank you so much.
Okay, and that official website address for Baker's?
The official BakersKeyboardLounge.com.
All right.